This started off because I had seen in our shared folder that Q and I have, a few articles talking about pedophiles. I have to say these words, so I'm sorry if they're triggering, but this is what we saw uh, from the Republican Party that were caught. Imagine the ones that don't get caught or the ones that are never made public. But, these were in our folders. And this isn't typically the sort of stuff that we cover. We tend to deal with data and statistics and systemic issues. But the hypocrisy of this party that had purported to want to protect children from trans folks and from whatever agendas that they feel exist, they feel it comes from the left somehow. That hypocrisy, it seems like almost disturbing when you see Republicans repeatedly coming up in our group chat of stories that we could potentially talk about. And then I thought to myself a while back, like, we should probably start tracking these because there seem to be a lot of them. Like every couple of months, there's another story and we don't get to it because we're talking about issues that are systemic, right? And then, I just never thought to approach this issue as though it is a systemic one until recently when Q and I talked about the number of people who were convicted for sexual assault crimes, the number of people who were convicted of pedophilia and sexual assault on minors and that sort of thing. And those numbers overwhelmingly overrepresent white men in the data. And it's a recent enough episode, so you can just go back and check it out, civiccypher.com, or you can check out the QR code. It's probably on both shows, but we decided that one recent story was worth talking about, and so we kind of set it aside and thought that this would make an interesting case, and it just turned into a really, really gross rabbit hole. I don't need anyone's applause, a pat on the back or anything like that, but I will say that this was by far and away the most disturbing research that I've ever done in my life. It is deeply unsettling. And without further ado, if you are well braced for what is to come, I will start. Republicans have a pedophilia problem. This from NBC. Robert Morris, the Texas megachurch pastor who built Gateway Church into one of the largest congregations in the country, pleaded guilty Thursday in Osage County District Court to charges that he sexually abused a girl in the 1980s. Morris, 64, entered the plea before Judge Cindy Pickrell, admitting to 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts with a child under a negotiated plea agreement. He was given a 10-year sentence, but he will serve only 6 months in the county jail. He must also register as a sex offender and pay $250,000 in restitution. Morris was handcuffed and taken into custody after Thursday's hearing. His lawyer told reporters that he sincerely apologizes for his conduct. Cindy Clemshire, the woman who accused Morris of molesting her at age 12, sat in the courtroom surrounded by family as Morris accepted responsibility, a moment she sought for decades. The plea represents a remarkable fall for Morris, who founded Gateway in 2000 in Southlake, Texas, and grew it into a megachurch with tens of thousands of weekly attendees. His sermons were broadcast to audiences around the world. His books became bestsellers in evangelical circles, and he served as a faith advisor to President Donald Trump. Okay, let's go back a little bit. This from The Guardian. A Minnesota state lawmaker who is accused of trying to buy sex from an underage girl resigned from the state Senate on Thursday before his colleagues were set to vote to expel him. Justin Eichhorn, a Republican, was charged with a felony in federal court on Wednesday for attempted coercion and entertainment of a minor after responding to online sex ads and trying to arrange a meetup with a 17-year-old girl. Okay.
That's enticement.
Is that what I said? Oh, enticement. Got it. Sorry. I got to make these words bigger because it's so much that I have to read through, but I'll do my best here. All right, let's move on. This is from justice.gov. A former North Dakota state legislator for 45 years was sentenced today to 10 years in prison for traveling to Prague in the Czech Republic, where he paid to sexually exploit children. According to court documents, Raymond Ray Everett Holmberg, 81, of Grand Forks traveled to Prague approximately 14 times between 2011 and 2021. During these trips, while staying at a brothel that catered to men looking to engage in commercial sex with adolescent boys, Holmberg paid for sex acts with boys. During some of the trips, Holmberg used the alias Sean Evans. Witnesses told law enforcement that Holmberg did not want his name on the brothel's registry because he was a North Dakota state senator. Witnesses also told law enforcement that Holmberg would also visit a public park in front of the main train station in Prague to procure sex from underage boys. So that's just a few recent stories. Obviously, there's more. I got to thinking, like, is this a trend? Because I'm seeing Republicans. To be fair, there's Democrats, but there's a lot more Republicans. I'll make my case in just a bit. And so I started to look, and then I came across sort of like a master list. I came across a few master lists, but one that was a little bit more prominent, others that were much longer. This was made sense for the radio show that we make here, because this is a timed show. And I went through, I did personally, and I verified every single one of these that I'm going to read. I did it. I spared Q the gross mire that I had to wade through. So I'm going to share with you one by one. Republicans have a pedophilia problem. Republican anti-abortion activist Howard Scott Heldreth is a convicted child rapist in Florida. Republican County Commissioner David Schwartz pleaded guilty to molesting 2 girls under the age of 11 and was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Republican South Carolina Representative R.J. May of Lexington was charged in July 2025 with 10 counts of distributing sexual abuse material involving children. He faces 20 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine. Republican Judge Mark Pazuhanich, I think, pleaded no contest to fondling a 10-year-old girl and was sentenced to 10 years probation. Republican anti-abortion activist Nicholas Morency pleaded guilty to possessing child pornography on his computer and offering a bounty to anyone who murders an abortion doctor. Republican legislator Edison Misa Alderando was sentenced to 10 years in prison for raping his daughter between the ages of 9 and 17. Republican Mayor Philip Giordano is serving a 37-year sentence in a federal prison for sexually abusing 8 and 10-year-old girls. Republican campaign consultant Tom Shortridge was sentenced to 3 years probation for taking nude photographs of a 15-year-old girl. Republican racist pedophile and United States Senator Strom Thurmond had sex with a 15-year-old black girl, which produced a child. Funny how that worked out. Republican pastor Mike Hintz, whom George W. Bush commended during the 2004 presidential campaign, surrendered to police after admitting to a sexual affair with a female juvenile. Republican legislator Peter Dibble pleaded no contest to having an inappropriate relationship with a 13-year-old girl. Republican Congressman Donald Buzz Lukens was found guilty of having sex with a female minor and sentenced to 1 month in jail. Republican fundraiser Richard A. Del Gaudio was found guilty of child porn charges and paying 2 teenage girls to pose for sexual photos. Republican activist Mark A. Grethen convicted on 6 counts of sex crimes involving children. Republican activist Randall David Akeney pleaded guilty to attempted sexual assault on a child. Republican Congressman Dan Crane had sex with a female minor working as a congressional page. Republican activist and Christian coalition leader Beverly Russell admitted to an incestuous relationship with his stepdaughter. Republican Congressman and anti-gay activist Robert Bauman was charged with having sex with a 16-year-old boy he picked up at a gay bar. Remember, he was an anti-gay activist. So we were talking about that hypocrisy. Republican Committee Chairman Jeffrey Patty was arrested for distributing a video clip of a 5-year-old girl being raped. Republican activist Marty Glickman, aka Republican Marty, was taken into custody by Florida police on 4 counts of unlawful sexual activity with an underage girl and 1 count of delivering the drug LSD. Republican legislative aide Howard L. Brooks was charged with molesting a 12-year-old boy and possession of child pornography. Republican Senate candidate John Hathaway was accused of having sex with his 12-year-old babysitter and withdrew his candidacy after the allegations were reported in the media. Republican preacher Stephen White, who demanded a return to traditional values, was sentenced to jail after offering $20 to a 14-year-old boy for permission to perform oral sex on him. Republican talk show host John Matthews pleaded guilty to exposing his genitals to an 11-year-old girl. Republican anti-gay activist Earl Butch Kimmerling was sentenced to 40 years in prison for molesting an 8-year-old girl after he attempted to stop a gay couple from adopting her. Republican Party leader Paul Ingram pleaded guilty to 6 counts of raping his daughters and served 14 years in federal prison. Republican election board official Kevin Cohn was sentenced to 2 years probation for soliciting sex over the internet from a 14-year-old girl. Republican politician Andrew Burr was charged with 2 counts of first-degree sodomy with a 13-year-old boy. Republican politician Keith Westmoreland was arrested on 7 felony counts of lewd, lascivious exhibition to girls under the age of 16, or exposing himself to children. Republican anti-abortion activist John Allen Burt was charged with sexual misconduct involving a 15-year-old girl. Republican County Councilman Keola Childs pleaded guilty to molesting a male child. Republican activist John Butler was charged with criminal sexual assault on a teenage girl. Republican candidate Richard Gardner admitted to molesting his 2 daughters. Republican businessman John Grunseth withdrew his candidacy for Minnesota governor after allegations surfaced that he went swimming in the nude with 4 underage girls, including his daughter. Republican director of the Young Republican Federation, Nicholas Elizondo, molested his 6-year-old daughter and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Republican benefactor of conservative Christian groups, Richard A. Dason Sr., was charged with rape for allegedly paying a 15-year-old girl for sex. Dason, 62, who is married with grown children and several grandchildren, has allegedly told police that over the past decade he paid more than $1 million to have sex with a large number of young women. Dennis Hastert served as a Republican Speaker of the House and third in line for the presidency. For all 8 years of George W. Bush's 2 terms, he also sexually molested at least 5 boys when he was a high school wrestling coach, all of them underage, with the youngest victim being 14. The victims only finally saw justice when Hastert was caught by the FBI trying to falsify payments for hush money. Donald Trump walked into Miss Teen USA change rooms with girls as young as 14 changing. 26 women have spoken publicly about Trump's pattern of sexual assault. In 2023, he was found legally liable for the rape of E. Jean Carroll by a unanimous jury. There's a much longer list here. This is just what I was able to verify, and the truth is this is plenty. I actually went into these cases, and they're really, really gross, but you're welcome to verify any of these because I was able to. Haven't talked about Jeffrey Epstein. You know that story. And obviously, this is not a full, exhaustive list of all of the crimes that have been that Republicans have been accused of. This is certainly not all the crimes that have taken place. These are the only ones that have come to light, or some of the ones that have come to light. But I thought to myself, let me look at Democrats. Let me take a look at Democrats. So when I would search, some of these I just typed in Republican molestation or Republican child predator, or whatever, and a whole list of stuff would come up, right? I thought to do the same thing with Democrats. And the closest that I got to an exhaustive list was a Wikipedia page that is a living document that kind of tracks political sex scandals. The name of the list, and you're welcome to check this out yourself, is List of Federal Political Scandals in the United States. Now, this list goes all the way back to like the 1700s, so there's no way I'm going to go back and quantify all of this. But I went back to 2010. This is kind of around the time when Donald Trump's politics started to infect the country's political arena. And when we became more polarized, and I really wanted to see, okay, let's look at Democrats versus Republicans, because from where I sit, this is largely a white man problem. But I wanted to see if there was a political slant to it. And so, again, I went back to 2010 to see if there were any tendencies in the data toward Republican or Democrat. And I counted up 28 incidents that made national headlines in terms of sex scandals. Of those 28, 7 were from Democrats and 21 were from Republicans, resulting in a 3-to-1 ratio in the past 15 years politics. And I saw names, familiar names. Matt Gaetz comes to mind. You know, he was the one that somehow didn't get in any trouble, but it was largely known that he was giving money to children so that he could exploit them sexually. Democrat Anthony Weiner, I remember that name. And there was a couple other names on there. But for the most part, where I was trying to look at where this problem was coming from in terms of which side of the aisle, it's coming from the Republican side of the aisle. So I'm not imagining this. And that's really enough. You can draw your own conclusions at this point, but that's really enough for me because this is the worst stuff. I'm a father accused of father. And you need to know that this is happening. And the crazy thing is that they're trying to chronicle a narrative that it's not them. They're not even trying to chronicle that. They're trying to chronicle a narrative that it's coming from a side of the aisle or a group of people that it has almost nothing to do with. They're focusing on trans people and LGBTQIA people and that sort of thing. And the problem doesn't come from there. The problem comes from, if I'm looking at the data correctly, white Republican men. Q, anything here?
White Republican men claiming to be Christians is an important thing to point out because that's the weapon and the vehicle that they use to baselessly accuse the LGBTQ community of being the perpetrators of these activities, right? It's the thing that they use to get people who claim to be followers of Jesus Christ to align with them. And they typically pick a couple of issues. One of them is abortion. They call themselves pro-life. They paint abortion as murder, and then they call it a sin. So evangelicals and Christians raise their fist and say no to that. And then they use the issue of the LGBTQ community, paint them as other, paint them as sinners, even though all have sinned and fall short. They make LGBTQ people the sin, the unforgivable sin that's beyond forgiveness. So they use anti-gay rhetoric and anti-abortion rhetoric, and they call it pro-life, and they frame it as protecting children. And again, evangelicals and Christians raise their fists, put on their Make America Great Again hats, and march with their Bibles and their list of people who do everything opposite of what Christ taught. You and I watched a mother on television the first time that this man was running for president. After a video leaked, video and audio of him saying, when you're famous like him, you can just walk up to women and grab them by. Everyone knows how that quote ends. Not only did he still win the presidency after that became public, but we watched white Christian supporters of his tell their children, tell their daughters, their pre-teenage daughters, that it's okay if that happens to them. It's okay if you get groped. It's okay if someone just grabs you there. That obsessed with their identity politics and their need to support this man, that even when he said something that vile, they told their own daughters, instead of just saying, okay, I was wrong and I picked the wrong candidate to support, no. I will convince, better yet, I will teach and indoctrinate my own children that what that man said and what that man does is okay, so that I can continue to support him and own the woke libs. Because that's also what it's about, right? Being able to be vile and racist and misogynist and sexist and homophobic in public with no shame, with no repercussion, with no accountability. Hate out loud with Christianity as the vehicle. And all these years of data that point to the largest perpetrators of harm to our children, be that through pedophilia or gun violence, is white Republican men. And though all the data points to them, they will other and otherwise criminalize everyone else. Once again, baselessly. And they're so stuck in these identity politics and so beyond the point of apologizing and owning their own mistakes that this continues to happen.